Hey there, feeling good today? You ready to stick with me through this whole video? Because this story isn't just a married couple's argument, it's a journey through trust, pain, and the choice between truth and comfort. Don't click away, because you're not gonna believe what happens next. Hey, listener, you're still here. Awesome, because this story's about to dig into some real family mess, love, pain, and truths that don't come easy. I'm Mark, 38, just a regular guy from Ohio, working as an accountant, living a quiet life with my wife, Lisa. She's 36, fierce and full of heart, the kind of woman who feels everything deeply and isn't afraid to show it. Lisa comes from a big, chaotic family of 9 kids, including her, raised by parents who loved hard but didn't always have it together. 2 years ago, her dad, Edward, passed away, and that's where this story starts. To me, he was an ordinary man, nothing flashy, but to Lisa's family, he was something else entirely. And that difference, it's caused more trouble than I ever expected. Edward was unremarkable, at least in my eyes. I met him when Lisa and I started dating, about a decade ago. He was in his late 60s then, a wiry guy with a smoker's cough and a wardrobe of faded flannels. He lived off disability checks, never held a steady job as far as I could tell, and spent his days chain-smoking Camels, eating cheap meat pies from the gas station, and watching reruns of old British shows like Doctor Who on a grainy TV. Their house was a cluttered rental, always smelling of tobacco and burnt coffee, with mismatched furniture and stacks of old magazines. Edward didn't leave much of a mark on the world, no career, no big achievements, but he had one thing going for him: he loved his kids. Lisa would light up talking about the toys he'd make when she was little: wooden cars, dollhouses, even a lopsided rocking horse, all carved by hand. Those were his gifts, proof he cared, even if he wasn't winning any Father of the Year awards. Lisa's family, though, was a different story. Growing up in that crowded house left scars. Her mom, Diane, was devout, always quoting scripture, but she had a temper that could flare without warning. Lisa's 8 siblings, 6 brothers. To sisters were a mixed bag. Some, like her oldest brother, Tom, battled paranoia and schizophrenia, worsened by years of drug use in their teens. Others, like her sister Claire, carried quieter wound trust issues, anxiety, the kind of baggage you get when love comes with chaos. The family leaned hard into conspiracy theories, swapping stories about COVID being a government plot or chemtrails controlling minds. It wasn't just talk. They believed it. Fiercely, Mark tried to stay neutral, nodding politely at holiday dinners while they ranted about the truth. Lisa didn't buy into it all, but she loved them, quirks and all, and Mark loved her enough to keep the peace. When Edward died lung cancer, no surprise given the cigarette hit Lisa hard. She grieved not just the man, but the idea of him, the dad who'd whittle toys and tell silly stories. Mark held her through the tears, helped plan the funeral, and stood by as her family fell apart in their own ways. Tom claimed Edward's death was no accident, spinning wild theories about hospital cover-ups. Claire stopped speaking to half the siblings over some old grudge. Diane, though, took it to another level. She announced she was writing a family memoir, saying, "God's guiding my hand to write the memories I don't even recall clearly." Mark thought it was just her way of coping, a project to keep her busy. Lisa supported it, saying it might help her mom heal. Mark didn't argue, but he couldn't shake the feeling that Diane's divine inspiration was more about rewriting history than facing it. To Mark, Edward's life was simple, even flawed. He was a guy who did his best with what he had, loving his kids in his own limited way. But Lisa's family painted him differently, especially after his death. At the funeral, Diane called him a quiet hero, spinning tales of sacrifices Mark had never heard before: how Edward supposedly worked odd jobs to keep them fed, how he shielded them from a cruel world. Lisa nodded along, her eyes misty, but Mark stayed quiet. He'd heard Edward's own story as complaints about the system, excuses for why he never held a job. The truth, to Mark, was somewhere in the middle. Edward wasn't a hero or a villain, just a man who tried and often fell short. That memoir, though, was about to change everything. Diane's project wasn't just a tribute to Edward, it was a version of their family's past that didn't line up with reality. And when Lisa started helping her mom with it, Mark found himself caught between his love for her and his need to call out what felt like a lie. How do you honor someone's memory without erasing the truth? That question was about to test their marriage in ways Mark never saw coming. Listener, this is just the beginning. The past is trickier than it seems, and Mark's about to learn how far love can stretch when truth gets in the way. Stay with me, you won't want to miss what's next. The months after Edward's funeral were a haze of grief and tension for Lisa's family. Mark watched them grapple with their loss, each sibling processing it differently, some with anger, others with silence. Lisa threw herself into helping her mom, Diane, with the memoir, typing up pages of half-remembered stories while holding back tears. Mark tried to be supportive, bringing home takeout on late nights, listening when Lisa needed to vent. But the family's wound sold grudges, mental health struggles, conspiracy theory kept bubbling up. Then, at a family dinner 6 months after Edward's death, Diane dropped a bombshell that changed everything. They were gathered at Diane's house, a cramped dining room packed with Lisa, her siblings, and a few cousins. The mood was heavy, but Diane's eyes gleamed with purpose. "I need to share something," she said, her voice trembling with conviction. "God's been guiding me, showing me the truth about your father." She paused, letting the weight settle. "Edward wasn't just our dad. He was trained by MI6 British intelligence when he was 15, during the Cold War. He was an assassin, sent on secret missions he could never talk about. That's why he was the way he was, smoking, the distance, the pain. It was all from those years he couldn't escape." The room went still. Lisa's eyes widened, her fork frozen midair. Her brother Tom nodded slowly, like it all made sense. Claire, usually skeptical, leaned forward, hanging on every word. Diane went on, her voice rising. "He carried those scars for us, to protect us. The government swore him to secrecy, but it broke him. That's why he never worked steady, why he struggled." To them, it wasn't just a story, it was a revelation, a key that unlocked every mystery about Edward's life. The meat pies, the endless TV, the disability checks, it all fit, transformed into the tragic aftermath of a hero's sacrifice. Lisa and her siblings latched onto it. By the end of the night, they were swapping theories, piecing together Edward's quirks as proof of his secret past. Tom said Edward's late-night walks were probably debriefs with handlers. Claire remembered him fixing radios, claiming it was spy training. Lisa, tears in her eyes, said it explained why he'd always been so gentle with them despite his rough edges. "He was protecting us from his darkness," she whispered. The story spread fast, not just in the family, but to friends, neighbors, even the pastor at their church. Edward, the unremarkable man Mark knew, was now a tragic hero, his flaws recast as battle scars from a covert war. Mark, though, couldn't buy it. He sat through that dinner, biting his tongue, his accountant's brain screaming for evidence. A 15-year-old American kid recruited by MI6, in the Cold War, with no records, no medals, no proof, just Diane's divinely inspired memory. It sounded like something from a bad spy novel, not real life. Edward had been a smoker with a couch obsession, not James Bond. Mark knew Diane's memory was shakish, admitted to gaps, claiming God filled them in for her memoir. He'd also seen the family's love for wild theories, from chemtrails to COVID plots. This felt like another leap, a way to soothe their pain by turning Edward into something bigger than he was. He stayed quiet for weeks, not wanting to stir the pot. Lisa was fragile, leaning on this story to cope with her grief. But the more she talked about it, quitting her mom's memoir drafts, planning to share the truth at a family memorial, the more Mark felt he couldn't stay silent. One night, after Lisa read him a passage about Edward's MI6 training, he took a deep breath and spoke, choosing his words carefully. "Lisa, I get why this story means so much to you and your family. I respect how it makes you feel. But to me, It doesn't add up. There's no evidence. No documents, just your mom's word. I think Edward was who he was, a dad who loved you, not a spy. Lisa's face crumpled, her eyes flashing with hurt. You're saying my dad was a liar, she snapped, her voice raw. You think my mom's making this up? This is our family, Mark. This is what we have left of him. Mark tried to explain. I'm not saying he was a liar. I'm saying this story sounds like it's filling in blanks that don't need filling. He doesn't have to be a hero to be your dad. But Lisa wasn't hearing it. You're dismissing our pain, she said. Tears spilling. You're calling our memories a joke, to her. Mark's doubt wasn't just about the story, it was an attack on the fragile hope her family clung to, a betrayal of the man they were mourning. The fight didn't end there. Lisa pulled away, spending more time with her mom and siblings, leaving Mark on the outside. He felt stuck between his love for her and his need to call out what seemed like a delusion. Was he wrong to question their story, or was their belief in it blinding them to reality? Either way, the gap between him and Lisa was growing, and the memoir, with its wild claims, was only making it worse. Listener, the truth's getting murkier, and Mark's in deeper than he thought. Stay with Metha's family's secrets are about to unravel in ways no one expected. Mark was stuck in a no-win situation. The story of Edward as a teenage MI6 assassin had taken root in Lisa's family, growing into a myth that gave meaning to their pain. To Mark, it was a fabrication, a way to gloss over the messy reality of a man who was neither hero nor villain, just human, flawed, and gone. But every time he saw Lisa's eyes light up reading her mom's memoir drafts, or heard her siblings swap theories about their dad's missions, he felt the weight of his doubt. Was it worth pushing for the truth if it only deepened their wounds? Or was letting them believe this fantasy the kinder choice? For the first time, Mark wasn't sure where the line was between honesty and love. The fight after he questioned the story left a chill in their marriage. Lisa spent more time at her mom's, helping with the memoir, while Mark stayed home, crunching numbers and second-guessing himself. Their conversations were clipped small talk about groceries or bills. Nothing deeper. He missed her, the way they used to laugh over dumb TV shows or planned weekend hikes. But every time he thought about apologizing, he stopped. He wasn't sorry for doubting the story. There was no evidence, no logic to it. Diane's God-given memories and the family's conspiracy-prone mindset made it hard to take seriously. Yet he hated how his skepticism had hurt Lisa, how it had turned her grief into a wall between them. Mark started asking himself hard questions. Was truth always necessary in a relationship? He'd always prided himself on being straightforward, the guy who called things as he saw them. But watching Lisa cling to this story, he saw it wasn't just about Edward, it was about her family's survival. The assassin tale gave them a way to forgive his failures, to make sense of their own scars. It wasn't fact, but it was comfort, a bandage on decades of hurt. Could he take that away just to be right? He thought about Edward's life, he'd smoking, the meat pies, the handmade toys. Maybe the truth was simpler than any spy story. He'd loved his kids, even if he hadn't always shown it well. Did that need embellishing? One night, alone in their Ohio home, Mark made a choice. He couldn't keep fighting this battle, not if it meant losing Lisa. He didn't believe the MI6 story, and he probably never would, but he could love her through it, let her hold on to what gave her peace. When she came home from her mom's, he was waiting in the kitchen, 2 mugs of coffee on the table. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice softer than it had been in weeks. Lisa nodded, wary but sitting down. "I'm not going to bring up your dad's story again," he said, choosing his words carefully. "I don't see it the way you do, and that's okay. I don't need to. What matters is you, and I hate how this has come between us. I love you, Lisa, and I'm here for you. Whatever you need to get through this." Her eyes softened, tears brimming. "You don't think it's true, do you?" she asked, her voice small. Mark took a breath. "I think your dad loved you, and that's the truth I care about. The rest, it's your family's story, not mine to judge." It wasn't a full surrender, still held his doubts, but it was a step toward her, a bridge over the gap. Lisa reached for his hand, her grip tight. I just want to feel like he was more than his mistakes, she said. This story it helps. Mark nodded, squeezing her hand back. Then hold on to it. I've got your back. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest in its own way, a compromise between his need for reason and her need for healing. They sat there, coffee going cold, and for the first time in weeks, the silence felt like connection, not conflict. Mark didn't change his mind about Edward. He still saw a man who'd lived a small, troubled life, not a secret agent. But he learned something. Love doesn't always mean agreeing on the facts. Sometimes, it's letting someone believe what keeps them whole, even if it's not your truth. He'd never read Diane's memoir with the same faith as Lisa, but he'd support her, show up for the family gatherings, nod through the wild stories, not because he believed them, but because he believed in her. As the memoir took shape, Lisa's family leaned deeper into their narrative, planning a memorial to share Edward's legacy. Mark stayed on the sidelines, offering quiet support, keeping his skepticism to himself. It wasn't easy, still cringed at the spy talk, but it was worth it to see Lisa's smile return, to feel their marriage steady again. So, listener, here's where I land. Truth matters, but so does compassion. I chose to love Lisa not for what she believes, but for who she is. Thanks for sticking with me through this. Now I'm curious, what would you have done? Called out the story, or let it be for the sake of peace? And when does truth outweigh comfort in your world? I'd love to hear your take.